Hello again. Alright, well what we've gone over in parts 1, 2, and 3, the basic process for brewing beer. Today what we're going to do is we're going to actually go through a recipe. We're going to take it from the adding the waters to preparing actually for the brew, all the way through to getting it into a carboy and getting it set up for primary fermentation. So sit back. Got about 20 minutes, and we'll take you through about an hour and a half worth of home brewing. The beer we're going to brew today actually is a recipe that my neighbor came up with, and it was actually the first beer that I brewed. And I'll take you through our ingredients here, and we'll start with our light extract. We got 8 pounds of pale or light extract. We've got a pound and a half of grains. We've got 1 pound of crystal malt, 60 Levy Bond, and we've got a half pound of Munich malt. As well, we've got 3 pounds of honey, tarragon, coriander. We've got fresh ginger root. Actually, I probably should have taken this out of the bag, but fresh ginger root. You pick this right up in your supermarket's vegetable section. And then we've got the peels from 3 oranges. I just want the peels. And then we've got our hops. Right now we've got 2 ounces of Centennial and 1 3/4 ounces of Cascade. This will be our boiling, our flavor and aroma hops as well. These are whole leaf hops compared to a pelletized hops or plug hops that you'll probably be more than likely brewing with. We harvested these in our local area here last week. So those are the ingredients, and we're going to get started. Alright, now before we get started brewing, there are some important things. You're going to be working off a recipe, and that, you know, a recipe is just that. It's your instructions for cooking or brewing your beer. Along with that, you're going to have to keep notes and what they call a brewer's log. So let me show you some of the things that I've done over the time and kind of where I've developed. First of all, when you order your kits online, this is a great place. Actually, it's been a great supplier for us. They give you a recipe and they tell you when and where and how much, and there it is. It's a recipe. As well, as I mentioned, the beer we're brewing today is a recipe from my neighbor. So he actually printed out typed out and printed out a recipe for me. In following the recipe, then, you're going to want to keep a brewer's log. This is where I started. And it's really haphazard. It's all over the place. I've got notes in the side margin. If someone else were to try to interpret these, they'd have a hard time. It's tough for me, and I wrote them. So, actually, what my counterpart, my neighbor, came up with was an actual brew log. And what this allows you to do is write down, okay, how much malt extract you used, what types of grain you used, your bittering hops, your flavoring hops, your aroma hops, when you added them, how much. It's basically kind of like a scorecard for the beer you brewed. It also allows you to put a start date. You can name it and the type of beer it is. So really, when you're brewing your beer, you want to keep in mind that a recipe that you want to replicate, you want to follow over a kind of your game plan and kind of go back and look over your notes. Keep them organized. This is a great way to do it. We're ready to fill up our brew pot and get everything started. It all starts with water. Of course, there again, my stainless steel brew pot, glass lid. And what I'm going to do is take my graduated cylinder, 32 ounces, and I'm going to put exactly 2 gallons of water into my brew pot and get it on the stove and get it warmed up. Alright, what we've done is we filled our brew pot with 2 gallons of warm water, and we left ourselves 4 to 5 inches here of room because we are going to be adding, you know, 8 pounds of malt extract, 3 pounds of honey, and other ingredients. So we don't want to get ourselves so high that we run out of room. Alright, now we got our brew pot on the stove. Nothing in there right now but 2 gallons of water ready to become beer. I put my temperature setting at high. Your stove is going to vary, so you're going to have to play with it, and that's something over time that you'll learn. But I set it on high here to get this water rapidly heated. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the 1.5 pounds of grains and put them in the grain bag, and I want to soak them in my water prior to boil for 10 to 15 minutes. All right. Now I've added my grains into the grain bag. Simply, it's just a big 1.5 pound tea bag. And these are crushed, cracked grains, not crushed, cracked. And I did this at the local brew shop. I measured them out, put them through a crusher, and then brought them home in that paper bag. So we'll just dip these in. And once again, we want to leave these in for about between 10 and 15 minutes. This is where you'll establish body in your beer. And that's kind of that thickness, more on the palate rather than drinking like a watered down drink versus something like a wine versus a wine spritzer, I think is the example I used prior. Tie it off. I try to keep it off the bottom and let it do its magic for 10 to 15 minutes. Alright, now that we've got our grains steeping for the next 10 to 15 minutes, that gives us some time to prepare our flavoring ingredients that are going to go in the beer. Some will go in right when the boil ensues, others will go in at other points of the recipe. So, as I said earlier, we've got our 4 ounces of ginger here that I picked up at the local grocery store. We've got the peels of 3 oranges, coriander, tarragon. What I'll do is I'll take these little ramekins and I will measure out, 1-2 teaspoons depending upon what ingredient, and get those prepared in my ramekin. I'm going to take the orange peels, which I've halved. I've taken off in almost whole half segments. I'm going to rip those up into little postage stamp size pieces to increase their surface area. And then I'm going to take my ginger, and there's a good shot of the ginger root. I mean, it grows in any shape or form it wants to. Once again, take our little pampered chef, common kitchen item, and just shred our ginger until I come up with 4 ounces of shredded ginger. And this little step is something to do when you've got 15 minutes of grain steeping and you need to occupy your time. This is a perfect way to do it, and a perfect way to get flavored, wonderful homebrew. Alright, I've prepared our orange peels. They're, again, postage stamp size. You don't have to get a postage stamp out and measure them out, but that's going to increase the surface area. Recipe calls for 4 ounces of ginger. I measured out 2 ounces and 2 ounces, and I did that with my handy digital scale. This is invaluable, but there again, it's not something that you need with your first brew. But if someone's looking for a gift idea, this is a great thing. That's how I got it. And then I've got the tarragon and the coriander already measured out. So as soon as we get our grains steeped, we will continue on and add these in throughout the brew process.